People who have witnessed there's not going to be a wedding moment following a bachelorette party. What went down? One of my best friend's wedding was cancelled when he learned she slept with a stripper after her bachelorette party. Like 3 days after. He is happily remarried now with a kid. Worst part was that it was a destination wedding honeymoon and he couldn't get a refund, so we all went anyway and he was super depressed the whole time. His family was all there too. College friend was to get married to a guy she had only known for 4 months. She found out where the bachelor party was and wandered in to find the groom getting some head from the best man. A stripper came to my buddy Jack's bachelor party and proceeded to put a condom on a dildo and bang herself in front of the crowd. It was awesome. At the end of the night, Jack, the groom-to-be, was cleaning up a bit and put the condom wrapper in his pocket absent-mindedly. The next day his fiancée Kristen was doing laundry and found the condom wrapper and freaked out, thinking that he had cheated on her. Jack tried to reassure her and explain the situation, that the stripper had used it on herself. Kristen is a really cool lady and takes it pretty well and calms down. But she can't quite shake the feeling. So Jack tells her to call me to confirm what happened. Kristen calls and asks, so what happened last night? Mind you, I'm totally in the dark about the situation. And Jack and I had never discussed what we are supposed to tell Kristen. So I totally downplay it. Not much. The boys just had a few beers and smoked some cigars. I hear you, lying piece of shit. Click. Oops. While they're working the night before a wedding at a hotel, the staff and I heard a loud scream from upstairs. Cue the bride screaming and sobbing, shouting the wedding's off, while storming out the place, followed by the groom stark bollop naked, covering his nether regions with his hands, apologizing profusely. Turns out she caught the mother of the bride and the groom shagging. Safe to say we had an easy shift the next day, as we didn't have a wedding to cater for. My friend had been with his fiancée of 8 years when she got pregnant. Fast forward 8 months and we decide that because they are basically common law married, we need to throw him a bachelor party. So we go to the nearest big city and he's abused by strippers, and we're all quite drunk when he gets the call that his fiancée is in labor. None of us is in any state to drive. We end up calling a cab and paying over $300 to get him to the hospital as soon as possible. My friend is stumbled down drunk when he walks into the delivery room smelling like strippers, with a big dick drawn on his face and covered in glitter. I was positive that was the end. They've been married 7 years and just had their second child last week. My cousin runs a popular upscale marriage venue and always tells the story way better than this, so here is a rough overview. The groom's mom was a heavy drinker and got belligerent when she drank, so understandably the bride wanted the groom to try to limit her drinking. The afternoon before the wedding, the bride arrives to see groom's mom smashed with the groom himself giving her beers. Next thing my cousin knows, she was there to oversee preparations. The bride and groom are in a straight up fist fight, which leads to an Anchorman style street fight between members of both families in the parking lot. Apparently they recently scheduled a new day for it. I can't imagine the tension there. I used to work at an upscale wedding venue. 2 weeks before a huge, expensive wedding, the groom's father dies. So they ask us to turn the wedding into a funeral instead. They were a lovely couple, and it was really awfully sad when it happened. But I still use it as my go-to answer for describe a time when you delivered outstanding customer service type questions in job interviews. Sorry. : Paramedic. Bachelor party mixed with drunk driving. One of the groomsmen held. Believe the entire wedding was cancelled and the couple split up. In the early 90s, my friend's brother was getting married. The night before, the groom and best man decided they should kill the ex-boyfriend of the bride. They did. They got caught. And the wedding was cancelled, for obvious reasons. As far as I know, the two are still serving time. I think you've got it confused. Doyle died a couple episodes later. Angel saved him from being held by the groomsmen in that episode. Bachelor party in Vegas. Bachelor hooks up with a girl. Gives her his cell phone number so they can continue the party that night. Bride-to-be is sitting at home with the iPad getting all of the iMessages from the girl. She cancelled the wedding that day. A couple years ago, I went to Vegas with my girlfriend at the time and a group of her friends. One of the other girls did the same thing. Her boyfriend was sitting at home using her iPad to watch a movie and saw all the messages. IGF at the time kept trying to say how we should try to cheer her up. And I was just like, why? She got what she deserved, honestly. My buddy was sitting on my couch the night before his wedding. He said, "I want to throw that itch in a combine." The rest of us all kind of looked at each other in disbelief. It lasted a year or two. She's still alive. Not me or anyone I know personally. But in Detroit there's an AM radio show called Dave and Chuck the Freak. The show is pretty much what you expect. Big dig and fart jokes mostly. But they had a question to the listeners one morning on this exact topic. The story went that the caller had gotten super drunk at his bachelor party and some of his groomsmen sodomized him with liquor bottles and took photos. The caller had even stated that he brought this up to his fiancée and she basically said, "Get over it and don't ruin my big day." Needless to say, having this info out on the Metro Detroit radio waves caused quite a backlash against the groomsmen and fiancée, even ending in some kind of legal battle, if I recall. Anyway, the caller received very positive support from the community to cut it off with his fiancée. There was even a trending hashtag on Twitter for a while after. Edit, a letter edit, AM as in the morning. I had a buddy whose fiancée slept with a male stripper at her bachelorette party. He found out but wasn't totally irate about it. They had a pretty open relationship and flirted all the time with other people. Anyways, a couple days before their wedding, he got drunk and slept with one of his fiancée's friends. He told her what he did, and they both basically said truce, and got married. 8 years later, they're happy with 2 kids. It's weird though, cause the friend that he banged still hangs out with all of us. No one really talks about it. True story, man. Buddy of mine went out night before wedding, crashed his car and died. They dated for like 5 years and the morning of the wedding, he was dead. Had a weekend of golf planned a couple weeks before the wedding as his bachelor party. His fiancée drops him and cancels the wedding. We all still went golfing and had a great time. Ended up being the first of our annual golf trips. We will be on our 10th next year. One of our buddies makes a giant scorecard for our trip and always has the title real big. Fiancé name Memorial Golf Tournament. I was at a very big wedding. They must have spent a gom on it. Both families were very well to do, but the groom's side were clearly going up a run on the social ladder. The groom's father insisted on organizing it. They held it in this castle in the English countryside. Huge reception before the wedding itself. Live bands. Entertainers. They had a massive catering company, some 20 plus people to serve a massive medieval feast. All over the bride's extensive family and the groom's family, where there must have been 200 people in total. They had to have private security team at the front entrance to ensure that tourists didn't come in by mistake. Anyway, some pillock comes running in with a sword, killing a dozen people, including the bride's father, and injuring more. Turns out the groom had called him because he didn't want to get married and focus on his signing career. People laughed the thing off and just spent the rest of the evening signing. Not bachelor party related, but close. Girl was set to marry guy. The week leading up to the wedding, guy gets busted in a child prostitution ring. He said he didn't know she was underage and that he was under a lot of stress due to the wedding. Girl didn't buy the BS. Needless to say, wedding was off. A lot of these stories sound like there shouldn't have been a wedding to begin with. Still have no idea why people commit to spending the rest of their lives with someone they don't trust. Buddy of mine was pretty worse for wear on his stag do, UK. We were trying to get him into a club and were giving him a pep talk to try and make him act sober in the queue as we were waiting. His fiancée wasn't a fan of him drinking, and my buddy always had to try and pretend he wasn't too drunk after a night out. So one of the boys said, "Imagine your fiancé was here." Without missing a beat, he screams at the top of his lungs, ducking whore. Definitely had my doubts about that one going ahead, though it did. A guy I somewhat knew from working on a site, construction, ended up getting drunk at a bachelor party and driving a side-by-side. Basically overpowered off-road go-kart golf cart things. He ended up rolling it and not only paralyzing the groom but also killing the best man. He's facing a lot of charges and it basically crushed his entire self. He wasn't a bad guy or anything. Just made one stupid decision that ruined 3 lives for good. Here is a more upbeat story. The night before their city hall wedding, the bride and groom had separate big parties and got so wasted they both slept through the wedding. They didn't realize it until City Hall called asking where they were, and they decided, "Duck it, we'll do it later." They did eventually get married, and still are as far as I know. Over 20 years later. As work-related case, we had this one accident. Bachelor part group were drinking heavily and middle of the night they get this great idea to try drive up skiing slopes during summertime. The slopes were very steep and their car came down rolling for 80 meters down the slopes. Groom got taken to hospital by helicopter and spent his supposed to be wedding day in tubes. Not a party I attended, but not too long ago there was a story on the news about a bachelor party. It was a normal party from what I understand. But at some time during the evening a bunch of guys roll up the bachelor in a rug and put him outside against the wall. And leave him there. Just to mess with him. They go back out there a little while later and release him from the carpet. But to their surprise, they have left the bachelor upside down in the carpet. And he's now dead. Was at a bachelor party in Vegas. The bachelor went a little overboard on everything and ended up running off with a prostitute. When he got back no one said anything. Then he ordered another prostitute and locked himself in his room. The next day his fiancé brother one-shotted him and left him unconscious on the ground. The party was over, but he stayed and continued doing coke and prostitutes. The wedding was off. Not at bachelor party, though my uncle got left at altar on his wedding day. 5 years relationship. My granddad had to go up on altar, thank everyone for coming and say there would be no wedding. My uncle was heartbroken and went on a trip to New Zealand. He sat on plane next to a dude from there. He invited him to his family's home. And my uncle ended up marrying his sister. They are still together and have had 3 kids. She is awesome and all happy days. Eldest child 21 years. Best aunt. Friend of mine had a bachelor party at the local strip club 2 days before the wedding. I was going to come later in the evening as I was flying in late for the bachelor party and wedding. Got a call right before takeoff that the groom had fallen from the upstairs in the VIP section and they believed had severed his spinal cord. Turns out he had severed his spinal cord and after a few months of rehab was fully paraplegic. Amazingly the wedding did happen. Almost a year later. It puts things in perspective that she still stayed. Best friend's bachelor party a few years ago. He had dated his fiancée for 6 or 7 years at that point. She made a male friend at work that became a groomsman. I hated him. Didn't trust him and told my buddy that. The night of the party after huge amounts of alcohol the groom breaks down crying. Leaves and walks home. Didn't say anything to anyone. Just left. Found out the next day that the bride-to-be had been banging the piece of shit groomsman for months and they were trying to work through it. He couldn't get past it and cancelled the wedding.